What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you my first place World Championship celebration Exodia profile. That's right, so we did the World Championship celebration this week. It was a week delayed, and we actually did it by the new ban list, not by the world's ban list, and I decided to take Exodia Millennium to that event. Now, I ended up doing 4 rounds of Swiss. My first round was up against Yugioh, second round was up against Gimmick Puppet FTK, third was up against Flunderees, and the final was up against Ritual Beasts. So all of those matchups were very, very interesting, quite grindy in some scenarios, but what the Exodia deck gave me is it gave me a lot of unknown factors. And what I meant by that is a lot of my opponents didn't know how the deck operated, how they faced it, what its playstyle was. And then when I was able to utilize 15 incredibly powerful board breaking or just stun hand traps, stuff like Ghost Mourner, Mole Chummies, Shifter, and you'll see them a little bit later on, they really did struggle. So I was able to go 4-0 all the way undefeated, and it actually allowed me to win the World Championship promo kind of envelope. So I'm not going to be opening this up because I do want to keep it sealed, but it does contain, for those of you that are curious, a quarter century Swords of Revealing Light and a quarter century Doom Calibanite. So, with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. I'm going to take you through the profile, explain why we've got it, well, what we've got and why we've got it. I'll also show you my demo side deck as well, so you can kind of see what I was playing with, what I was siding in, and what I was siding out. There are already a couple of changes that I would like to make with this deck because there's a couple of cards that I actually left at home because my initial plan was not to play if there was an even number. There was odd numbers, and I was like, okay, well, I'm either going to play Yugioh or I'm going to play Exodia, and I kind of felt that there would be more fun playing Exodia because I felt that it has a much more unknown factor about it. So, we start off with having to play each of the Forbidden One pieces. So, Exodia, the Forbidden One, the left, right, and right legs and arms. So obviously you need to play all of these. I can't wait for these to get the quarter centuries because then I'll be able to upgrade and have a quarter century set. But I do still quite like the idea of being able to use LOB. I just feel that it's kind of like the nice way around it. Then for the Millennium Monsters themselves, you kind of max out on your best ones, which is the Senjin. So this is the one that all of them get to put themselves into the spell and trap zone, and then they get to reveal an Ankh, or you pay 2,000 life points to summon them to the board, and then they do a different effect. This one lets you search out a Millennium Monster, and then the other one that you're maxing out on is the Millennium Shield, and this will allow you to get you the Ankh. The idea is that once you've got the Ankh, that is your route to your Unstoppable Exodia Incarnate, which is your main boss monster OTK enabler. And basically what I did to design this deck was just go all out aggression. The idea was I was always going to be going second whether I won the dice roll or not, and usually because my opponent didn't know what I was playing or they didn't expect Exodia, usually in the early stages of the event, when you choose to go second, everyone's like, right, it's Tenpai. So they all start to play around the Tenpai strategy, and then you just end up playing loads of board breakers, loads of stun cards, and then when you're dropping all the hand traps on them, they're like, what the hell is this kind of strategy? And then you kind of put them into a position that when you go into game 2, when they're choosing if they go first or second, I found out that no one actually made me go first this entire time. There was a couple of cards that I was siding in, and what I mean by that is there were a couple of cards that I was like, well, if they make me go first, I'll put them in. But if I'm still going second, I have such little resource that I can break a board and then push into an OTK, that even if I hard open up that go first card, it gives me that ability that if I'm not able to complete the OTK, I still then retaliate with that stun card that is specific for that matchup and end up winning the duel anyway. So Shield gets you the Ankh, and then of course we do play the one Golem that guards. This one gets you access to the field spell. Now the field spell isn't that mandatory, neither is the Golem, but it's still very, very important because that's where you can run them down at 1s and not at 3s, because the idea behind this is going to get you access to be able to get to the Millennium Shield, which gets you to the Ankh, and obviously gets you into the Senjin, which can get you into the Ankh and everything else. So the idea is you want to get to this card here. So as you can see, I was playing 2 of the Temple. Arguably, I'd probably want to play 1 Terraforming and 1 Temple, but again, that was one of the first things that I messed up with, is that I didn't have my Terraforming on me. I only had the 2 Wedju Temples, so I decided to main the Wedju Temples and just stick with it. So Wedju Temple lets you put any monster from your hand into the spell and trap zone, and then you get to put a Millennium monster from the deck into your spell and trap zone. So that's how your Wedju Temple acts as more copies of the Shield, it acts as more copies of the Senjin. So you're basically saying that all of these cards right here, you're playing 9 Millennium monsters or 9 routes to the Millennium monsters to get you to your Ankh. Once you get to the Ankh, this is your OTK enabler. So you show 5 Forbidden One cards from your hand, deck, and then basically all your face up on the field to special summon an unstoppable Exodia Incarnate from the extra deck. You then shuffle face-up monster cards you control into the deck except Exodia monsters, whose original levels are 10 or higher, and Millennium monster cards. You can't special summon for the rest of the turn, and then you shuffle this card into the deck rather than sending it to the graveyard. Now the idea is that you're going to be getting this guy. It will be a base of 8k ideally. If you have had to pay life points, it will go down in multiples of 2,000, and that's where Spooky Dogwood kind of comes into play, because if you drop that on your opponent, and it's why you can main deck it, is it really kind of puts your opponent in position of like, okay, well, how strong do I make my board? As soon as you're obviously only going to be activating the Dogwood when they've activated a card that is going to special summon a monster, because the last thing you want to do is activate Dogwood and they go past and you halve your own life points. That would just be crazy. So the idea is that when they activate a monster effect that is going to spawn a special summon, so for example, if they were to go Requiem, tribute that off, you would go Dogwood at that point. Now obviously prior to that you might be able to drop Dogwood a little bit earlier, but you want to make sure you don't get stuck on that. The idea is that then you're just going to increase your life points. So whether you're using life points as free kind of cost fodder in order to get the shield to get you your Ank and then no longer need to pay that cost, or if you end up getting into an unstoppable Exodia, this is obviously going to mirror your life points. So if they special summon a monster of 2,000 or more attack, you're going to be straight up to 10k. This is your 10k enabler, and all you need to do is activate Ank, which is very, very tricky to stop and negate, and that's of course where the guard comes in as well. Another thing to mention is all of these have like little mini effects that a lot of people forget. So with the guard means that your Anks cannot be negated, the shield can't be destroyed by your opponent's spell and trap effects, and this can't be destroyed by monster effects. Or technically these can't be destroyed by spell and trap effects, and these can't be destroyed by monster effects in general, so even your own. So the idea is that a lot of people forget those ones, so if you do have to go into the grind game, they kind of try to blow up the board or deal with it in one way or another, and that's where you're able to kind of protect your board and build it up in a different way. For the last Exodia card that I was main decking was the one Obliterate Blaze. Now in my previous profile I was actually playing 3 of this, but I felt that it was less and less reliant. And what I mean by that is this one level 10 or higher monster on the field with Exodia in its original name, it gains these effects. You pay half your life points to destroy as many spells and traps in the spell and trap zones as possible, and then equip 5 Forbidden One monsters from your hand and or deck to your card. To that card as equipped spells, it gives it 2,000 attack. So each one would give it 2,000 attack, meaning that the Exodia will be a base of 10,000. And then on top of that, when it attacks, it will gain the life point as well. So it can go up to like an 18,000 attack stat monster. Also, if it attacks a defense issue monster, you inflict piercing battle damage. Now the issue is, the 2 effects are gained, they're not quick effects. If they were quick effects, where it's like, okay cool, pay half your life points, equip 5 pieces to this card, nuke your opponent's back row, and then if it does attack, it has piercing, would be amazing. But unfortunately it's not. Now there was a couple of times where I wanted to main deck the Exod, as the Exod is the alternative to that, where you basically nuke your opponent's entire board. But I was kind of going for that all-out aggression. I was literally trying to play where my hand traps did the walking and talking for me, and then I just went one-shot Exodia OTK. There was a couple of times where I couldn't complete the OTK, and I did need to fall back on other cards, and that's where I'd probably want the Exod in the deck, but that's something I'm going to be tweaking around with later on. Then the rest of the deck is basically just roots to board breaking normal spell cards, hand traps that are just a pain in the backside to deal with, and just board breaking monsters. So I was playing 2 True Tactics Frost, which allowed me to get access to Mind Control, Change of Heart, Raigeki, Lightning Storm, and Talents. So obviously 5 power play spell cards. A lot of people were not expecting cards like Raigeki and everything else, but the idea is that Lightning Storm gave me that ability for front row or back row, which is why it's this rather than Harpy's Feather Duster. Yes, of course you could play Snatch Steal, but Snatch Steal wasn't accessible off of Frost, and I kind of felt that the worst case scenario, if my opponent stopped me getting to my Ank, Frost could actually get me to my Ank. And then when I bring in normal trap cards from the side deck, stuff like Dimensional Barrier, Frost could also help me get me access to that. So it gave me the benefit of going first and second, which is why you're playing so many of these power spells. Then for the board breakers and then the hand traps, I was playing triple Lava Golem. The fact of the matter is you don't need to use your normal summon at all. At any point you need to use a normal summon, it means you've opened up a piece of Exodia, and that's something you don't really want to be doing unless you need to defend and wall up a little bit. But the idea is a lot of people were putting 2 monsters on the board. I was able to Lava Golem them. So when you were looking at stuff like the Ritual Beast matchup, they would have the Omni-Negate Guy Pelio on the board, or they would have monsters on the board set up ready to trigger Steeds on me, and I'd just go, cool, Lava Golem, get rid of them. In the Gimmick Puppet ones, I got rid of their XYZ so that their Gimmick Puppet trap was less effective. In the Yubel matchup, you get rid of 2 Yubel monsters, so it means you don't need to worry about pain as much unless they have Throne on the board and they float around. So it really did give me a lot of options playing Lava Golem, and this is what I love about the deck, is the fact that it doesn't need you to use your normal summon. You can play a card like Lava Golem. Obviously, it's a lot easier to deal with Lava Golem, whether you bounce it, put it in defense, leave it on the board, whatever, than it is to deal with Raw Sphere mode, which is why I went with 3 Lava Golem. You can, if we get into a control format, go with Denko, because you go to normal summon Denko and lock out the back row. But the issue is, once you then use Ank, you end up spinning your own Denko back to the deck, and then the back row is all back online, so you need to be careful. The one thing that made this deck insanely powerful is it could use hand traps like the following. 3D Shifter, free Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood, and free Mole Chummy. Now, literally in the Ritual Beast matchup, I dropped this on my opponent and their reaction was, what the hell is that card doing in the main deck? They didn't know about the style of the Exodia, they didn't know that I was going down the OTK route, and it really did shock them. The Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood shares the same kind of premise that Mole Chummy does, and it basically means your opponent has to think how much advantage they want to give you. And a lot of people just think that Ghost Sister, unless they know it's against Exodia, is going to be buffing the Exodia monster. So they're like, well, if I give them X amount of life points, as long as I survive the turn, I can then chip away at those life points and it doesn't make much of a difference. But what they forget is Exodia actually gets as strong as my life points are. So if I end up getting my life points to 15,000, they now need to deal with a 15,000 attack monster Exodia, which is nearly impossible for them to deal with. The Shifter was one of them ones where, obviously, as I told you, my matchups, Yugioh, Gimmick Puppets, Flunder, and Ritual Beast was completely useless in 50% of those matchups. It was a card that was sided out. But what I wanted to do with the Exodia deck is I felt that as we were going to this Worlds event, I felt there would be more people out there trying a lot harder to try and get the prize support, because the prize support was pretty decent. So I felt that there could be a lot of decks that would either auto lose to Shifter, so I felt that I wanted to be one of those decks that could do it, but then I also felt that there was a lot of decks that might think the exact same thing and go, well, Shifter is an auto win for my deck, I'm going to put Shifter in instead. So I felt that I wanted to make sure that my deck didn't lose to Shifter, but I also wanted to make sure that it could play Shifter as well. And siding it out was not a big issue, because in those particular matchups, there's cards that I would put in straight away. So for example, in the Flunderese matchup, Droll and Lockbird went in instead. And in the Ritual Beast matchup, D-Barrier went in instead. So it's just very easy swaps. And then Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood comes out against the Flunderese matchup, but Mole Chummy still puts in a lot of work. And it just gives you that advantage when you're going first. And then, like I said, no one actually made me go first, which was quite interesting to see. And the last hand trap we play is Triple Nibiru. I don't think I ever actually resolved this. And the best thing about this Exodia deck is it can play under 5 summons as well, which is absolutely amazing, because then it means you can get to your Exodia under 5 summons and then still pushing for the OTK, which happened in the Gimmick Puppet matchup. So the first one, they tried to complete the FTK, but they were under Mole Chummy and they gave me loads of draws. I think I ended on my turn on like 16 cards in hand. But they ended up, their board had a decent amount of monsters on it. I think it was probably less than 16. I think they ended their board with 3 XYZs, 2 back row, and the field spell, which is 6 cards. And I had 12 cards in my hand. So I had the exact amount of number before I needed to start randomly shuffling back in. But Nibiru was there. It's one of them ones that if your environment is always playing around it, you take it out. But I think it's just such a powerful card right now that there are a lot of decks that go in the main phase and you go Nibiru and they're in trouble. So stuff like the Ritual Beast matchup, I put in a lot of work with. Flunder, it didn't really put in a lot of work because they were kind of playing under the 5 summons. But there are just times when Nibiru just really does cook the opponent and, yeah, puts in that work you need it. So that's it for the entire main deck. I'm now going to show you my extra deck. The extra deck, the only thing you really care about is this card right here. So we're going to be playing 3 The Unstoppable Exodia Incarnate. So it cannot be destroyed by an opponent's card effect, and then once per turn, if it battles, during damage calculation, you get to make this card gain attack equal to your life points. Once per turn, when a spell, trap, or effect is activated, quick effect, you get to negate the activation, and then once per turn, during the end phase, you get to set an Exod or an Obliterate spell or trap from your deck. Once per turn, during your standby phase, lose 1,000 life points. Now, obviously, it's very rare that this is going to be on the board during your next standby phase to lose that 1,000 life points, but you just need to be aware of it if that does happen. On top of that as well, what makes this card so incredibly good is it is literally just a one-punch machine. Yes, of course, your Exod and your Obliterate are very useful to get to, which is why I don't rely on them so much, because it's one of them ones where I want to be OTKing. That's the whole plan of this. That's what I'm aiming for. That's when it only becomes an issue, or when I need to rely on the Exod and the Obliterate. The rest of the extra deck is pretty much up to you. Like, I play the 1 SP Little Knight just for those odd times where I would Change of Heart or Mind Control one of my opponent's extra deck monsters, link it off with my Millennium Shield just to bounce or banish a back row. Because then when I'm attacking with Exodia, as long as I'm not having to attack directly because of SP Little Knight, you're still able to attack and then either do piercing battle damage because of Obliterate, or you're going to be doing enough damage over the monster that is on the board. The rest of the extra deck is just pretty much staple cards that you could play in this environment. What I did want to do is I also wanted to have Super Poly in the main deck, because I was like, okay, let's give Super Poly a try at the format, but I left my Super Polys at home, so I was like, well, that would be completely pointless. So you're just playing generic cards: Dart the Dark Charmer, Moon of the Close Heavens, the Earth Charmer, Link Spider in case you get Nibiru and you need to turn it into an effect monster, BLS, Pentastag, just in case you want your Millennium monster to do piercing and not your Exodia, Access Code Talker, Underworld Goddess, Selene, IP, and Nightmare Phoenix. I think I legit made Nightmare Phoenix once, I made Underworld Goddess once, and I made Moon of Close Heaven once, and SP once. Everything else was all the Exodia fusion monster. The extra deck is pretty much flexible. You can do whatever you need to, because what you need to remember is when you activate Ankh, all of this gets spun back to the main deck, back to the extra deck, so you're not really ending your board on anything too amazing. And if you do go first, you're basically choosing to go SP, so you'd be choosing to go IP into SP rather than having your Exodia, which negates a spell and trap. So you kind of have to be like, which one's more effective for me, which one's going to be more useful for me. Not to mention you also get Exodia or Obliterate, so you're getting a board wipe and a spell or trap negate, or you're getting an SP Little Knight banish if they don't stop your IP. Moving on to the extra deck, the side deck. So for the side deck, I was playing 4 monsters in the form of 2 Bestials, so 1 Magnamute, 1 Druid Swarm, and 2 Drolls. Literally the 2 Drolls were in here because I kind of wanted to play a couple of one-offs in the deck. So you can cut the one-offs out if you want to and then play the 3rd Droll, but Droll was one of the ones where I think it's kind of drifting around the format right now. I feel a lot of the main decks are able to play around it or play through it, and it's not as much as an auto-lose kind of hand trap as something like Mole Chummy, Dogwood, or Shifter are. And then Bestial, of course, is one of the ones where if the environment is all darks, go for it. If it's not all darks, it's not that effective for you because most of your cards are going to be Earths, and you only really want to be using these as hand traps during your opponent. So obviously they went in against the Yubel matchup, they didn't go in against Flunders, they didn't go in against Ritual Beast, and they went in against Gimmick Puppets as well. So you can kind of see the difference of what you're working with. Then for the spells, so we played the 1 Secret Village. So obviously this is the issue with not having Terraforming, is the idea is if I had Terraforming, I would put in the Secret Village and then my Terraforming can get me my Wedju Temple or the Secret Village. So this is the one that you'd probably take out for the 3rd Droll, but I completely forgot it and I was like, you know what, I'll just go with the luck of the sack, and if I see it, I see it. Duster, you can set it off of your, or you can search it off of the back of your Thrust. True Cosmic Cyclone, because obviously you can't always rely on Thrust to be set, and then sometimes your opponent might get that sacky. Like in the Yubel matchup, they were playing Eternal Favourite, Eternal Favourite, so I had to Cosmic that in order to complete the OTK. I needed to... there's times where they had Rivalry, which is a bit of an issue. Anti-Spell could also float around as well, so it's just cards that I was aware of, which is why I still play Cosmic. And as you can tell with the Exodia deck, yes, of course, Exodia can negate the back row, but it can't deal with already face-up back row, so you just needed to have ways about in it. Triple D Barrier, I just felt that against Yubel, you can hit Fusion, can hurt them. Gimmick Puppet, XYZs, Ritual Beast Fusions. So it's one of them ones where it's a normal trap card, I can set it off of the back, and it's probably more effective for me than DDG, because if you have DDG, you've already got Shifter. So are you really going to have Shifter and DDG? And when you saw that only 50% of my matchups were effective against it, it kind of became a little bit redundant. And last 3 are just, again, one-off power plays. So Anti-Spell, Tikaboo, and then the 1 Exod. So obviously Exod is searchable and settable because it's a normal trap card, so you can set it off of the back of Thrust. But then obviously Anti-Spell, Fragrance, and there can only be 1. It was just one of the ones that if you sack it, great. And also, it was also one of them ones, more so Tikaboo than Anti-Spell, was like, okay, well, I'll keep the Mole Chummies in because I'm still expecting that I want to be going second, and I don't know if my opponent is going to risk letting me go first. So I'd put in something like a Tikaboo, a D Barrier, and an Exod. And it was one of the ones where it's like, okay, they make me go first. Well, I've got Thrust that can get me into both of these if they hand trap me. I could get lucky and hard open the Tikaboo, but if I end up going second anyway, I can still get into the Tikaboo, so that if they're able to stop my board being built or stop my OTK, I can flip a Tikaboo on them. I still got D Barrier to hit them in retaliation, and I still have the Exod to set off the back of my Exodia. So you were kind of like preemptively, if they took that risk without disrupting what the deck was doing, and that was mainly in the scenarios of, okay, well, in the Thunder matchup, I don't know if they're going to make me go first or second. In the Ritual Beast matchup, I don't know if they're going to make me go first or second, but I know straight away that Shifter is useless, so that comes out for 3 more effective cards. So I'm going to brick just as much on Shifter as I would these if I end up going second anyway, so I decided to go down that particular route. And that is pretty much it for the entire main deck, side deck, extra deck, you name it, and the tournament report. So the only 2 things that I'd really want to change with the deck is I'd want to try out the Super Poly version of this deck, which you basically end up playing like Garura and Mud Dragon, pretty basic on that one, and then triple Super Poly in the main deck. And then the other card, obviously, if Yubel is a thing at your format, you can also bring Yubel in. The other thing that I wanted to put in here that I think was missing was a Typhon, and purely because there was a couple of times where I only needed a little bit of damage left on board. Luckily, I had enough to get that there, which was absolutely fine because I just activated Ankh and did it. If I didn't have access to Ankh, there was times where I could steal my opponent's monster, and I was like, they summoned twice the last turn. I could just rank this up into Typhon and then bounce and kind of hold the board state there. And with the extra deck being so flexible, like I said, there's probably like, if you were to cut this down, you just want your generic staples in here. Like, you don't need to have the Pentastag. You can take that out. You don't need the Selene. You don't really need the Earth Charmer because the cards you're going to be reviving are going to be less effective. You definitely need this. This is just like a nice little option. You don't really need the BLS. This just leads you into this. SP Little Knight is just SP Little Knight. IP can help you get into SP. Access is a nice option. Link Spider is very specific. Dart the Dart Charmer, again, very specific because you need a Dart monster to use. And so you pretty much already have, at the base minimum, 2, 4, 6 cards that you could flex around with. And they could be Typhons, they could be other cards as well. Yes, of course, you could think about Pot of Extravagance, but I feel that you're risking it. Like, yes, okay, all you need to do is not banish one of these, but then all you need to do is banish all 3 of these and your entire kind of strategy goes down the drain. So you do need to be a little bit careful on that one, which is why I'm personally not playing Extrav. And I feel that I've got enough. Like, I'm using Mole Chummy as my own personal Extrav because if I see Extrav, I've got just as much chance of seeing Extrav as I do Mole Chummy. Because obviously I'm only going to, like, Extrav will be a little bit more of a chance because you'll draw that SIP card for turn. But I'd much rather see Mole Chummy in my starting hand of 5 because then that leads me to everything else that I need that's going to be more effective. Like, if it leads me to an Extrav, I'm not really going to want to play the Extrav. I should have everything I need to by that point. So I'd rather than Extrav, I'd rather it be the exact card that I need, if that makes any sense. Anyway, that is it for the entire video. If you do have any questions at all, by all means, please put them in the comments down below. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. For now, as absolutely always, stay safe and, of course, happy dueling.